Alright, today I'm going to be talking about travel tips for New Zealand. I'm going to do just the North Island today because trying to do the North and the South would result in a 40-minute video and that's going to take way too much of your time. So I'm just going to focus on the North Island. I spent about 5 days there and the highlights that I focused on were Mount Doom, Hobbiton, Cathedral Cove, Hot Water Beach. I tried to go find the mermaid pools and then the city of Auckland. A good tip is to live off of peanut butter Nutella sandwiches for breakfast and then maybe throw in some granola bars for lunch. And then for dinner, focus on pasta and rice dishes because they're very cheap. You can make any of these meals I just suggested for about $5 to $6. And then every now and then you can blow $10 to $20 at a McDonald's or KFC if you find one. So my first day did start off with a slight setback. My flight was delayed about 5 hours because they had 2 flights. They canceled the earlier one, which I was on, so they sent it from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock. So instead of getting in with plenty of time to drive, I got in at about 10 p.m., got through security, bent over to pick up my bag, ripped a giant hole in the back of my pants in front of a bunch of travelers, and then hopped in my car and had a 3.5 hour drive to my actual destination. So instead of getting into the spot I wanted to get to, which was Taupo at around 11 p.m., I got to my hostel about 1 in the morning. Now this kind of drive would upset most travelers, but I actually enjoyed it a lot because since it was literally in the middle of the night, no one else was on the road except for me, my little RC rental car, and giant 18-wheelers. So I was weaving in and out of giant 18-wheelers going up and down mountains for about 3.5 hours from my destination of Taupo, coming from Auckland. So my first full day, I was in Taupo, New Zealand. I wanted to drive to the Tongariro National Park, better known as Mount Doom from Lord of the Rings. And it's about an 1.5 hour drive, and the actual walk is 19 kilometers one way. So most people try to set up a coordination between them and another traveler where they each walk one way and then switch cars and meet up at the end. But if you're just by yourself, you can't do the whole trek in one day. It would take you way too long. You're not going to walk 40 kilometers in one day to hike around this mountain and back. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go and park and then walk a certain distance. I personally walked about 5 kilometers in one way, so 10 in total, and that got me close enough to the base of the mountain. If I kept walking for another half an hour, I probably would have got a lot closer, but I'll show you in a few images how close I actually got walking in 5 kilometers. But it's enough where you can go and you can get a decent picture of the mountain to be able to say that you went to go see Mount Doom. On my second day, I went to go do the thing I've been looking forward to for so many years. I went to the redwood forest. I'm just kidding. So they do actually have a redwood forest in New Zealand, similar to the one in California. But the real attraction of the North Island of New Zealand is going to see the Hobbit Movie Set, or the Shire, Bag End, however you refer to it. So the best way to go and see this is you schedule a tour in advance. But what I highly recommend, especially for photographers, is that you choose the last time slot available that you can go on. So that means there's less people in the set walking around. And then it's closer to sunset, depending on what season it is. You could almost time it so that it almost is as close to sunset as possible when the tour ends. But what was nice is that the tour guide realized that I was trying to focus on taking photos than just being on the tour as a standard tourist. So at the end, she actually let me walk around the entire movie set by myself. Because at the end of the tour, they have everyone go into the Green Inn for a drink. But she turned and said to me, you have 20 minutes to walk around the set, take whatever photos you want, and I'll come out and bring you your drink, which was one of the nicest things that someone could have done for me, especially being a fan of Lord of the Rings in the movie set. Then in the gift shop, I spent about an hour staring at the one ring, really deciding if I was really going to buy it or not. But common sense prevailed, so instead I bought this White Tree of Gondor t-shirt, which I actually still love. Apologies for the change in light. It's a super sunny day, so the sun keeps coming in and out at different strength, so I keep having to adjust my settings. The next thing I did was I went to go check out Cathedral Cove and Hot Water Beach. Cathedral Cove is like a small little hike. It's really more up and down hills than just long. And the problem is it kind of depends what the tide is at. Because if it's high tide, which is what it was when I was there, you're only really going to be able to see like half of the cove. You're not going to be able to go out and walk around it because the tide comes up so high it blocks off the exit at the end of the cave that you'll see. Because the real attraction is this giant cathedral looking rock that a lot of people love to take photos of, but you can only get to it at low tide. Then with Hot Water Beach, I wanted to go check it out because it's heated by natural thermal heat in the earth. But the one thing I didn't know is that you're actually supposed to bring a shovel and dig down into the sand to actually experience the hot water. Because the water at the surface level is just your standard ocean. It's going to feel cold. So what people do is 4 or 5 groups, they each bring a shovel, they dig giant hot tub sized holes in the sand. So then when the tide comes in, the hot water from underneath comes up and fills the hole that they dug, creating a real life inland jacuzzi. Now another attraction that my friend recommended when he studied abroad there, thanks for the recommendation, Brendan, but unfortunately I couldn't find them, but I went to the location, do my best to. So north of New Zealand, there's an area that's home to mermaid pools, which are just naturally formed, isolated pools by rock. I went to the exact beach and I just couldn't exactly find them. I didn't want to just walk straight into this foresty area not knowing what I could be stumbling into, like insects, animals, or whatever. I didn't want to take that risk in the beginning of my trip. The real scare is that in this area, there's no gas station, and I was pretty low on gas, and the nearest gas station was just within that really close range of me actually running out of gas. So when I was driving back to the main town, I was actually not using any gas going down hills, and I was accelerating as little as possible, trying to make sure I had enough gas to make it to the nearest gas station. So another common travel tip is just make sure you have enough gas when you get to each station. Really try to not go below half a tank of gas because you never know when that next stop is at. So the last day I spent in the North Island of New Zealand, I wanted to go check out the city of Auckland. From my first impression, it's very similar to Seattle, just on a smaller base. And instead of the Seattle Seahawks, you have the rugby team All Blacks that's all over the city. But it's got its own like Space Needle, not a Space Needle, but its own like large tower in the center of the city. It's always kind of rainy, or at least it was super rainy when I was there. And it does have a small lookout point on the top of what they call Mount Eden, which you can go and get a cool picture of the city. Now I was kind of having a miserable time there because of how crummy the weather was, that I tried to take a happy looking photo, but I was just kind of too miserable, but I'll kind of show you what I look like in this. Also, it's when I actually started to grow out my hair, so I have super short hair in this picture. But I couldn't find anything super special about the city of Auckland to recommend going to visit it. New Zealand is one of those countries where the real beauty is out in the landscape, not in the city. And the problem was I had a really bad hostel experience there because my hostel said it had free parking, which it didn't, so I had to overpay to put my rental car in a garage. And just from my general experience, the further away you get from a city, the better quality the hostel gets. That's just from my experiences so far. I can't say that for other countries right now. But overall for the North Island, the main attractions are Mount Doom, Hobbiton, the Cathedral Cove, Hot Water Beach, and then maybe there's a few others, but the majority of big scenic things you want to go see are in the South Island of New Zealand. So mainly you're going to go to the North Island for 1 or 2 days of seeing Lord of the Rings themed attractions, and then you want to get to the South Island to go see the big huge mountains that you've seen in many photos. So for my favorite moments, it's kind of tied for 2 because it was my first time traveling alone by myself in the world. So going to Mount Doom the first day and taking a photo in front of it was a very this is real moment. But then also the fan in me loved every single second of walking through Hobbiton. And easy Lord of the Rings fan or fan of this genre, they've done such a fantastic job maintaining the set that it really feels like you are there when you're walking around the set. So now for a price breakdown. I was there for about 4 to 5 days, and I realized I combined all of my prices to average out my 2 weeks in New Zealand. So then I'm just kind of estimating what I spent over the 5 days here right now. But I spent about $40 to $50 in food, and then I spent about $115 driving around North Island just in gas. I spent about $13 on 1 6-pack of beer, just why not kind of thing. So the car I rented for about 5 days cost me $207. Now a lot of people who don't get the insurance, I did just because I wanted that extra protection. This was one of the first times where it actually did come in handy, because when I was actually walking around Cathedral Cove, I came back and someone had actually run into the car I rented, creating a huge just dent in the front bumper. And thankfully, because I had the insurance, they covered it, which would have been thousands of dollars to fix if I didn't have the insurance. So it's just one of those moments where I was finally actually happy that I did get the car insurance. But it's also completely up to you if you're going to take that risk or not. Now, a general hostel in New Zealand for each night will be between $15 to $25 depending on where you are. So I spent about $125 for about 5 days in hostels. And then just because of the parking garage, that one night you have to throw in like an extra $50, which really did suck. For souvenirs, this shirt cost me about $40. I bought it from the movie set, so they're gonna, of course, increase the price, but I was just happy to have an extra shirt when I was traveling. Now, my flight from Sydney to Auckland, New Zealand cost about $270. I do understand that most people won't be flying from Australia, they're gonna be flying from all over the world. And you just have to keep in mind that New Zealand is very far away, so it might cost you a few $1,000s for a round trip ticket. I just tried to look right now, but because of the current situation, the price is all over the place. So I saw tickets from $2,000 to $5,000 for a round trip, so I kind of think it depends on which airline you're taking and also what the current situation is and on which day of the week you fly. But plan out, it could be about $2,000 to $3,000 for a round trip ticket. Maybe it's less. You just have to hope for the best when you plan on eventually going. When you're going to this part of the world and you're paying that much for one flight, we try to go and explore for at least a month, maybe a few weeks more. I went for a whole 2-month trip just because if you're paying that much to get out there, spend the extra time to go explore other parts of the world, because why pay all of that just for 1 week? So if you are interested in going to New Zealand, I recommend about 4 to 5 days for the North Island, maybe 3 if you're just going to go see the Lord of the Rings stuff, and spend the majority of your time in the South Island. Now, my next video on travel tips will be about the South Island, so you can watch both to kind of get my journey and tips for both islands combined. I did it in about 2 weeks, about 13 to 14 days. If I could do it again, I would have spent 2 months in New Zealand because there's just so much to see, and I would have loved to seen it at different seasons or different days or in weather kind of instances. Now for the camera gear section, I had a very standard setup because I didn't have a ton of space because I was backpacking with a bunch of clothes. I didn't have a big camera bag with me. All I had was my standard regular backpack. So in a protective sleeve inside that bag, I had a standard DSLR, I had my Mark III. I had a 24 to 70 millimeter lens that went down to 2.8 aperture all the way up to 22. And then I had my regular beefy tripod with me and then my drone on top. So I managed to get a bunch of sweet photos with the 24 to 70. The only time I wish I had one that was larger, maybe like a 70 to 200, is if I saw a cool animal in the distance. Or now the 24 to 70 is a very awesome kind of range if you're traveling and you can only bring one lens, because it does allow you to take awesome portraits from because 24 is a very wide for a landscape if you're not trying to get a whole panoramic kind of setting, and 70 is tight enough where you can get a nice focal low depth of field kind of shot and not worry about not being too cropped or everything being too far apart from each other. So if you do have to limit yourself to one kind of lens, I highly recommend a 24 to 70 millimeter. Alright, if we're looking at the North Island of New Zealand, as you can see, Auckland's a little bit towards the top. So this is the main city that you fly into. So I had to go from Auckland to Taupo. If I zoom out, Taupo is located in the middle of New Zealand. So you spend about 3.5 hours, if I remember, driving from one to the other. Yeah, so 3.5 hours if there's light traffic. And then from Taupo to Mount Zoom, which is down here, the Tongariro National Park. It's about an 1.5-hour drive. Let's see if I do back to directions. $50 minutes if there's no traffic, factor in an 1.5 hours if you have some light traffic. And the drive along Lake Taupo is very scenic. I actually did stop and take a quick picture as the sun was setting on my way back. And it's kind of one of those moments where it's just like, this is traveling. I'm by myself in the world for the first time. So then the next day from Taupo to Hobbiton or to Matamata, you want to factor in an 1.5 hours all the way back up. From Matamata to Hot Water Beach and Cathedral Cove, it's up in Coromandel. I'm not gonna pronounce this correctly. So that's about a 2-hour drive, so just remember that. And then from Cathedral Cove / Hot Water Beach, you can see where Hot Water Beach is on the map, probably about half an hour drive. Now from the Hot Water Beach / Cathedral Cove area all the way up to where the mermaid pool should have been, Matapore, it's about, so you can see, a 5.5 hour drive. So this did take me quite a while to do, but once you get north of Auckland, that's when New Zealand really starts to feel like the Shire. It's just endless rolling green hills. You got some mountains in the distance, some forests. It's just such a beautiful drive. It was just really awesome to even just make that trek all the way up there and back. And then from where the mermaid pools should have been, I can never find them, back to Auckland, you're looking at about a 3-hour drive. So in the end, I did about 15-ish hours of driving my rental car, and for the amount of distance I went in 5 days and the amount of gas I had to pay, it really didn't end up being that expensive. If you like these tips, share them with others. I'm going to be making more videos about the other places I went to. Feel free to comment on anything you'd like to know that I might have not included in the next video or going forward, because it'd always be fun to improve these and include things that people would want to hear about or things that they might want to know about a specific area or region that I've been to. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys all next time.